Hey everybody, welcome to the 2021 sampler. Before I get started on showing you how to make January's block, I wanted to talk about a couple of things. I wanted to talk about thread, and I like to use a very neutral thread to piece it with. My favorite is the Aurifil, and then the Metler is also really nice. You can use either a 50 weight or a 60 weight. So this would be the 60 weight. So I generally use a gray thread, and then if you're not happy with the gray, then like a soft beige works well too. You don't have to match your thread to each project. I just use a neutral, and then I hope for the best, because then it won't really show. So what's nice about these is you get a lot of thread. This is a 50 weight thread, and you get a lot for your money, and then there's also these threads. Okay. Move that out of the way. Okay, the next thing is needles. I use an 80 universal needle. They work fine for me. If you're having trouble, then you can experiment with other needles, but I find an 80 weight is really fine. We have the Inspira needles, and then we also have the Schmetz Chrome. The Chrome are really, really nice. So if you haven't tried the Chrome yet, I would give it a go. See if you like it. Okay, and then the other thing is take some scrap fabric and put it together and sew it and measure your seam and see if you really are getting a 1/4 inch seam. A common problem is people assume that they have a 1/4 inch seam on their machine, and they really don't. So take some test fabric, sew it, and see if it's a 1/4 inch, and if it's not, then adjust your needle or adjust something so you do get that true 1/4 inch. Okay, all right, so I'm gonna get started. So all seams in quilting are a 1/4 inch, always. There's never really an exception, so make sure you always have your 1/4 inch seam. All right, so the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna sew A and B fabrics together. They're 2.5 inches wide by around 10.5 inches long. The 10.5 doesn't need to be exact, but the 2.5 does. So I'm gonna line these up, and I'm gonna sew it together. So now I'm going to press this open. I just cut my thread a little bit. I'm going to press it open, and I'm going to press it towards the darker fabric. Okay. Okay, so once I have this pressed, I'm gonna clean off one edge and cut it really nice and straight. And when I do that is I take a ruler, and I line up the ruler on a line. I line up my seam with a line on the ruler, so I get it nice and straight, and then I trim off one end. So let me do that. So right now I'm just straightening off the edges. Okay, so now it's nice and straight. And then I'm going to cut these into 2.5 inch wide segments. Okay, so I have these 2.5 inch wide segments, and now I am going to sew this to a plain rectangle. So if you look at the picture on your instructions, it's going to look like this. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make 4 of these. So let me make one, and then I'll put it on the board behind me. iron it towards that plain rectangle. So I'm making 4 of those. Okay, one more. I'm just going to cut these apart. I forgot to bring over scissors, so I'm just going to use this. Okay, I'm going to press these. Again, I'm pressing it towards that plain rectangle. Okay. So now I'm going to make 2 of these units, okay? So you're going to notice where I have these purple squares. So I want them where they're positioned just like that. Okay. And you're going to make 2. Okay, so I'm going to add the other piece on the other side. So it's going to look like this. So let me do that. Okay, so I have 2 of these made, and then when I go to press it, I like to press it towards this plain square in the center. It will just lie a lot flatter, so I'm just going to press it both seams towards the center. All right, and what's left now is the middle section. And the middle section is just this colored, this piece of fabric in the center with 2 plain squares opposite sides. So I'm just going to sew these together. Okay, so in these rows I pressed everything towards the purple in the center. So on the center one, I'm going to also press it towards the purple. That way my seams are going to go in opposite directions. Okay. Now I'm ready to sew this together in rows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin it at this seam, and I'm also going to pin it at that seam. And because I pressed my seams in opposite directions, they should line up really well. So what I do is I make sure that I get these seams lining up nice and tight, and then I put in a pin. Do the same thing with the other seam. Get it lined up really nice. Put in a pin. And then I also want my beginning and my end to meet, and I just hold it and do it, but if you would rather pin it, you could always pin that as well. So I'm making sure my end meets. That way you won't end up with one longer than the other. Okay, when I iron this side, the top part has fewer seams, so I'm going to press it towards the side with the fewer seams. And I like to press it from the top so I can see what I'm doing. Everybody has their own way of pressing, but I like to see what's happening. Okay. And now I'm going to add the bottom part and do the same thing. I'm going to match up these seams. And pin them. Okay, so I just have one more seam to press.